North Node in Capricorn and in the 10th house. Introduction. With your North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, your North Node is doubled down in the house ruled by its same sign. This means that what you have mastered in the past you have overdone to an extreme, and it may be, or may have been, if you are further along your journey, more difficult for you than most to overcome your emotions and stay grounded. If you have personal planets in earth signs, this may come more naturally to you, but depending on your specific chart, it could be more challenging. Having your North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house means your South Node is in Cancer in the 4th house. The sign, Capricorn, of your North Node signifies the qualities you need to develop, but the house, 10th house, indicates in what area of life you most need to express them. Likewise, the sign, Cancer, of your South Node signifies the qualities you need to let go, but the house, 4th house, indicates from what area of life you most need to walk away. Qualities to cultivate: emotional self-control, integrity and self-respect, setting and staying committed to goals, planning and strategy, releasing the past and family, self-care, taking responsibility for success, making work and accomplishments public, protecting and providing, boundaries, where to cultivate them, career and profession, life calling, position in society, social standing, reputation, material success, public identity, public image, in broader society, as opposed to first impression upon meeting achievement and ambition, authority figures, including bosses and the dominant parent, law and government, legacy, qualities to let go, taking responsibility for others and their feelings, dependence, moodiness and controlling others through emotional displays, insecurity leading to inaction, limiting self through fear or low self-worth, using the past to avoid the present, isolation, hiding one's accomplishments, lack of self-respect, avoidance of risk, keeping oneself small, lack of boundaries, where to let go, private inner self, emotions, family, submissive or nurturing parent/caregiver, vulnerable communication, psychological foundations and personal past, home and domestic life, instinctive behavior, ancestry and cultural heritage, security, understanding the axis. Having the North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house places you on the responsibility axis. It is the IC, Emumchueli, foundation, family, MC, midheaven, career, social standing, axis. It's a cardinal axis of independence as well as belonging. You may be nurturing, ambitious, and/or need to be needed. House 4 is ruled by Cancer and the Moon, which governs our emotions and our yin side. Cancer represents the archetypal mother, the nurturer, the caretaker. Capricorn represents the archetypal father, the authority figure, the business person going out to climb the career ladder and bring home the bacon. Capricorn rules House 10 and is associated with Saturn, the planet of restriction, hard work, and discipline. Cancer is the comforting, soft-spoken person who sacrifices their own needs to take care of you. Capricorn is the one who tells you to stop crying and solve your problems pragmatically. Your life path involves balancing being comfortable and private with being out in the world establishing a successful career. Inner peace versus outer action is a major theme of your life. Your karmic classroom is in aligning your personal mission with who you are in the world. The cardinal axes deal with power and projection, so power plays and/or projecting one's shadow onto others are signs of imbalance. With your North Node in the 10th house and in Capricorn, you might tend to over-nurture others and cultivate codependent relationships or get lost in a sea of compassion for others. You need to learn healthy emotional boundaries and take responsibility for your own well-being before sacrificing for others. Beware of your need to belong. Instead, be independent and, maybe, become an authority. Whenever you have a Water South Node and an Earth North Node, your natural tendency is to get lost in a sea of emotion, your own or others, at the expense of practicality and self-respect. You've got to learn to see emotional boundaries as part of emotional health, and allow everyone, including you, to take responsibility for their own feelings and survival. Let go of your need for belonging and fear of standing out and instead embrace a healthy desire to accomplish something in the world. Responsibility is the central power of this axis, taking responsibility for your house and loved ones, and/or taking responsibility for yourself and your worldly success. You must see the truth of duty's duality, that you are responsible for your own emotional well-being as well as for your impact on others. This plays out both at home and at work. Like the other cardinal axis of 1/7, this is about the self and its projection out into the world, and the adjustments made in exercising authority in different spheres. Your life lessons come through your family and career, and the degree to which you do or do not sacrifice for your family or your ambitions. The responsibility axis is about flowing within structure, being your own parent, nurture versus discipline, comfort versus challenge, intuition versus logic, intention versus result, attachment versus detachment, negotiating boundaries, security, taking care of both emotional and physical needs, and finding a place for the self in family and in society. This axis is about balancing the private self and public image. Like all astrological axes, it's about balance. It isn't about complete devotion to personal comforts or to worldly ambition, but learning to meet in the middle. It means taking responsibility for one's own needs as well as those of others, including all living beings. It means knowing when to retreat and when to advance. When you master this axis, you will have a healthy sense of duty, security without codependence, and self-worth without self-sacrifice. Ultimately, it is about balance. Perhaps you are already on your way. Your quest to find your place in the public sphere. With your North Node, NN, in Capricorn in the 10th house, your quest is to find a sense of belonging and security in the world. Your resource for achieving it is your integrity and taking personal responsibility for your own survival and success. In the past, you found belonging in your home, family, culture, and heritage. Now you're meant to move out into the public sphere. You bring tremendous empathy into this world due to many lifetimes spent taking care of others and putting their needs before your own. However, you took this to excess and sacrificed your own self-care, ambitions, and independence. Now you are meant to fill your own cup first, and through taking responsibility for your own survival and success, to discover where you belong in the world. You are meant to accomplish great ambitions through your hard work and perseverance. Your past, strengths, and excesses. Don't worry, you don't have to leave everything about the South Node behind. Again, it's about balance. The trick in balancing out the South Node is to embody the positive aspects while leaving behind the excessive and negative qualities. With a South Node in Cancer in the 4th house, taking care of others and staying in touch with your emotions comes naturally to you, but this is not your path this time around. In the past you spent a lot of time secluded at home, taking care of those around you. You are naturally empathetic and nurturing, an expert caretaker who sees beyond people's mere physical needs into their emotional needs. People may describe you as very comforting, nurturing, or maternal, depending on your chart and especially your ascendant. You spent most of your past lives as a mother or other maternal figure, in a position of emotional dominance over others who depended on you. You habitually sacrificed your own needs, especially needs for recognition and validation, in order to provide for others. This is the classic 1950s housewife placement. You were usually secluded, not allowed to pursue a high profile or status, so if you accomplished anything it was kept private. Even early in this life, you may have grown up in a culture or family environment that forced you to hide your achievements. On the plus side, you are likely innately nurturing, intuitive, empathetic, and encouraging. Taking care of others is second nature for you, and you make a great nurse, teacher, or counselor. You are very insightful and see the emotional reality underneath people's behavior, and have a compulsively compassionate response. Others feel seen by you and comforted by your presence. Your supportive attitude can transform someone's perspective and give them the courage they need to take a risk. You bring intense family karma into this lifetime, and you may have been either extremely fortunate or extremely unfortunate with your family of origin and the people you grew up with. You are more deeply and psychically connected to your family than the average person, and this either helps or hinders you in finding your way in the world. But your task is to forge your own path. You are instinctively protective over your loved ones, but you forget to protect yourself. In past lives, you were used to having others around who would protect you, so it doesn't occur to you that you need to protect yourself now. Life may have brought you painful circumstances that taught you this the hard way. You may have had someone close to you, especially in your family unit, who was harmful, and/or another one who failed to protect you when they should have. You likely feel the weight of responsibility for your family and their needs. You may have been a parentified child. It's likely that others depended on you too soon, before you had a chance to enjoy your childhood or become an adult yourself, and you may resent this. You may feel very unappreciated and unacknowledged at home, and find that caring for others really drains you. But there is likely an element of codependence too. While in the past you took care of others physically and emotionally, it's likely that someone else provided for you materially. As a result, you may have an intense fear of abandonment, both being abandoned and abandoning others. This may keep you trapped in the wrong relationships, as you misdirect your loyalty and commitment to prioritize others instead of loyalty to yourself and your own well-being first. Regardless of gender, you likely play a maternal role to family and friends, perhaps even to colleagues or others whom you serve in your job. You instinctively prioritize others' needs, making them feel safe and comfortable. You might get too close to people too quickly, adopting everyone as a family member in a way. You may fail to distinguish between an acquaintance, a friend, and a close friend. This lack of boundaries can cause a lot of trouble for you. Even if you are mature in many ways, your maturity is likely uneven and you have to grow up in certain areas. You are likely to be passive-aggressive and try to get your needs met in manipulative and indirect ways, especially through emotional overreactions, if only subconsciously. But this only backfires as other people sense this as an attempt to control them. You likely feel deeply insecure, especially in public. Socializing, networking, and even social media may cause you intense anxiety. You may harbor deep self-worth issues and a belief that you're not good enough to put yourself out there. You may tend to feel attached to and to idealize your past and/or parents, and through focusing on the past avoid being present or taking responsibility for shaping your future. Depending on your chart, you might struggle to let go of things, holding on to grudges and emotional pain far longer than is helpful or reasonable. You may tend to benefit from or hold strong beliefs about classism and nepotism. Having spent so many lifetimes thoroughly identified with your family or group, and emotionally attuning to others, you have not had much experience being out on your own. While you were secure this way, you had to sacrifice your confidence and self-respect. There can be a deep fear, conscious or unconscious, with this placement that one cannot survive on one's own. In fact, if you were forced to leave the nest too early, this is why. Part of your karmic destiny is to leave the family unity and develop independence and self-sufficiency. This lesson does not always come gently. In this lifetime, you have to kick the habit of depending on others, physically, financially, emotionally, and spiritually. More than any other placement, it is likely that some of the above applies or one or more or your parents or caregivers. They are showing you your own subconscious tendencies and how you have behaved in the past. That might not be all bad, but it's important for you to reflect on your parents objectively, see them as flawed human beings, and find the karmic lessons they have brought you. You likely have intense ambition, but may resist this part of yourself both consciously and subconsciously. You likely associate a lot of guilt, shame, and fear with ambition and success, and may see it as selfish or egoic. Deep down, you yearn to be respected by the public and world at large, especially by achieving mastery and authority in a particular field. It is difficult for you to draw self-esteem from anything other than work and the achievement of goals. The trick in balancing out the South Node is to embody the positive aspects while leaving behind the negative qualities. You are tempted to retreat to the safety of home and/or family, but this is not your path this time around. Time for a new tactic. While this strategy worked very well for you in your early life or in past lives, it will now backfire on you. Instead, you need to take practical action towards your goals, including both professional and material success. It is essential that you master your emotions, or else they will lead you to self-sabotage and block your success. Your soul wants to understand emotional responses on a rational level and release emotional blockages and reactive patterns that hold you back from achieving public success and recognition. Understanding your own emotions and reactions is deep work that requires diligence, dedication, and daily action. In the past, you often lost control of your emotions, and your strong reactions served to control and intimidate others and prevented your success. You're here to learn to stop doing that. You don't need to shame yourself for your sensitive nature. In fact, it is a source of tremendous strength, as you feel more deeply than others and thus understand more, and become more resilient as a result. Self-acceptance is key. It's just that you need to turn your accepting, nurturing, and compassionate qualities onto yourself. Self-care and, if necessary, reparenting yourself is one of the best things you can do to ensure your success. It lays the psychological foundation for everything else. This doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't want or have a family of your own, but you must learn to fill your own cup before giving so much energy to others. No one can pour from an empty cup. You must develop strong emotional boundaries. Your empathetic nature has left you too vulnerable to the moods of others, which can easily bring you down. You're so understanding that you easily internalize other people's fears, insecurities, pain, and even anger. It may be difficult for you to figure out where your emotions end and others begin. At the same time, you are also likely to project your own emotions onto other people, again not knowing where one ends and the other begins, which can undermine your confidence in your perception of reality. You may also become very clingy with loved ones, who experience you as invasive. All this merging can be exhausting for you and others, and it is easy for you to burn out emotionally. Relationships easily become codependent. Instead, you must learn to erect strong emotional boundaries in order to protect yourself, and to protect others from you. It is tempting for you to fall back into the emotional chaos of your inner life, but you have to learn how to master your emotions and give them form. Creative outlets are the most beneficial for this. Literally giving form to your feelings can bring you great relief and even success. To embody your North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, you must approach life from a position of being in charge. Instead of manipulating people with your emotions, you have to approach them from a position of calm authority, self-respect, and emotional detachment. This is the only way others will give you what you want. Commitment to a goal and consistent self-discipline are key to your success. Cultivating persistence, resilience, and diligence will serve you extremely well. Your life purpose is connected to your career and social status. You are meant to achieve something significant. Worldly success is guaranteed to the one who masters their North Node Capricorn 10th house placement, but it does not come easily or quickly. Symbolized by the mountain goat, Capricorn requires incredible perseverance and small daily steps that add up to enormous summits. So success will likely come later in life, but when it does come, you will be amazed by the view. You will encounter important life lessons through your relationship with the public. It helps to reflect on prestige and status and what these really mean to you, for you should not pursue them thoughtlessly, but with careful consideration and adherence to your personal values. However, this success is not only physical and material. There is an inner summit to climb, the mountain of one's higher self. Committing to spiritual ascension will only accelerate your rate of external success. It's very important that you get out of your comfort zone, especially your physical house. You must beware of any codependent tendencies and focus on your independence, especially financial independence, otherwise you will remain disempowered and under someone else's control. When you are able, you can provide stability and shelter to those in need. You may resist these ideas. We instinctively resist our North Node, but deep down, our soul recognizes it as the correct path for us. One beautiful thing about this placement is that worldly success and prestige are guaranteed for those who dutifully follow the path. Before you begin, I cannot emphasize enough that this process of psychological evolution does not require you to completely abandon your South Node and run willy-nilly into your North Node. When people do this, they often misinterpret their lessons and go off track. For instance, early on I tried to actively cultivate the qualities of my own North Node, but I still had so many habits, good and bad, in excess, from my South Node that I hadn't fully understood or gotten control of yet. Those South Node tendencies actively undermined and inhibited my ability to pursue my North Node, even though I truly believed that's what I was doing. So instead we must first seek to understand our South Node. Every quality, and every sign, has positive and negative manifestations, depending on its context, how it is used, and how evolved the person using it is. For example, with your South Node in Cancer in the 4th house, you're incredibly compassionate, but this compassion can also manifest as emotional leakage. It's not about disowning your empathy and avoiding others so you can never lose emotional control again. It's about understanding when and how to leverage your empathy. Maybe you don't need to rescue every broken person who walks into your life, but you do need to use your emotional insight to validate and empower someone who's ready to rescue themselves. Even more easily, we can misunderstand the lessons of our North Node, precisely because it is the most foreign to us, unless we have personal planets in the same placement or element, which makes it easier. In your case, someone with a North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house may think they just need to abandon their family and focus entirely on their career, but this would be an immature expression of that placement. Instead, waiting and looking for lessons about exercising emotional self-control in both their work and home life is a healthier and more effective way to start. Then when they are ready to embark on a career change, they'll already have some understanding of how to control their emotions while still giving others the gift of compassion. Of course, this isn't a linear process. We don't check our lessons off one by one on a list until we get to the reward at the end, and we don't simply move from one end of the axis to the other, though I may sometimes write it that way for the sake of clarity. In reality, our life is our best teacher. Our life is constantly bringing us lessons and reflecting our evolutionary stage back to us, showing us what we've mastered and what we still need to learn. Even more important than anything I've written in this book is that you judiciously reflect on how the themes of your nodal axis have manifested in your life specifically and in the people you've encountered, especially when there is a pattern, and there are always patterns. And just because a lesson repeats doesn't mean you didn't get it right the first time. It often means you're now dealing with the same subject at a higher level. Pay attention to your life. Both the South Node and North Node want the same thing, but they approach the desire from opposite perspectives. In the past, we've been pursuing our soul's deepest desire with the approach of the South Node, and the experience of never really getting what we want is what builds the pressure to pursue the North Node. The North Node path does not feel comfortable, safe, or familiar to us. It may even disgust us sometimes. But life will repeatedly deny us our deep desire until we learn and integrate the missing end of the polarity, the North Node we've left underdeveloped. In your case, your instinct to empathize and help others only causes you to drain yourself and sacrifice your own needs, until you stop enabling others like a Cancer and start taking responsibility like a Capricorn. The only way you can win in this life is to create win-win situations where nobody loses, including you. Oftentimes we do not begin to turn towards our North Node until we've truly exhausted the strategies of our South Node. At that point, we have explored all the positive and negative effects of our South Node habits and instincts, and we're able to use them with discernment instead of compulsion. But this point may come only when we feel completely defeated by our life. Exhausted, we're finally forced to try a new strategy, and we end up gaining even more than our deep desire, more than we ever dreamed. The fulfillment of our North Node promise doesn't look like becoming an embodiment of only our North Node, but instead embodying the best qualities of both the South and the North Node. Family karma. It's very common for South Node Cancer 4th house people to be born into a situation where family members have many emotional problems which they must learn to navigate in order to survive. Because this is what's required for their survival, they learn to attune to others' needs and emotions instead of their own. These are the classic empaths. As much as they may try, they cannot cure their loved ones of their problems, and become drained by their incessant demands and need for caretaking. In the midst of caring for others, they lose the sense of their own vitality and direction. It is okay for them to be close to their family members as long as they carefully monitor their intentions. If their motive is to fix a person or situation in order to free themselves up to finally do what they want, their efforts will only keep them stuck. They can never solve someone else's problem. They have to learn to detach and let people figure things out on their own. When South Node Cancer 4th house people try to solve others' problems, especially emotional or psychological problems, they easily internalize the other person's feelings of helplessness. In fact, the helplessness of the people around them is mirroring their own feeling of helplessness, which is often connected to inner child wounding. They ignore their own inner child's needs for attention, nurturing, and protection in favor of tending to other people's wounded inner children. But this is a lose-lose situation. What South Node Cancer 4th house people don't realize is that it's their very attempt to help the other person that keeps that person stuck. When they try to take over, boss them around, and solve others' problems, it disempowers the people they mean to help. By disempowering them, the South Node Cancer 4th house person keeps their loved one in a state of helplessness and codependency, thus ensuring their own fears of abandonment can never manifest. This is a complex problem with many subconscious layers, which we will illuminate throughout this book. For now, suffice to say one reason they feel this need to take care of others is that they don't trust their loved ones to take care of themselves and solve their own problems. But it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. As long as they keep taking over, the other person will never learn how to fix things on their own. South Node Cancer 4th house people also need to be needed by others, so they can keep avoiding themselves and their own goals. Thus, they remain codependent. Deep down, South Node Cancer 4th house people also fear moving out into the world and achieving their own goals. They fear being seen, feeling incompetent, failure, judgment, and much more. All this tempts them to stay home with the excuse that others need them. But too often, they are just hurting themselves and the people they claim to love. Ultimately, it's premature for them to try to help others succeed when they haven't even done it for themselves. An essential lesson for North Node Capricorn 10th house people is to live and let live, to step away and trust that everyone will learn to take care of themselves, including them. Putting boundaries around empathy. Many people in this world need to learn how to empathize, but that is the wrong advice for South Node Cancer 4th house people. Of course, empathy is virtuous and they shouldn't abandon it entirely. After all, they spent many lifetimes honing their empathic skills for good reason. They have an incredible ability to comfort others even in the darkest of times, and their nurturing influence can deeply heal others. This is a beautiful quality the world desperately needs. However, their empathy leaves them open to psychic attack. South Node Cancer 4th house people are so empathic that they can have a hard time distinguishing between their own feelings and others, and this leakage can cause a lot of problems when they either express themselves too much or internalize others' emotions. It is just too easy for them to merge with the people around them, so they have to learn to erect emotional and energetic boundaries and to be discerning about who they allow into their lives. Since they so easily internalize others' negative feelings, South Node Cancer 4th house people develop coping mechanisms that are unhealthy and self-sabotaging. Often this involves changing their own behavior and walking on eggshells in order to accommodate others. They give up what they want for the sake of social harmony. Oftentimes they take an illogical amount of responsibility for other people's moods, constantly monitoring and trying to prevent others' bad feelings so that they won't have to feel bad themselves. But the real way to avoid that is to develop emotional boundaries. There are tips and guides on how to have boundaries in the North Node Capricorn 10th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. When they try to cheer someone up or keep them happy, what South Node Cancer 4th house people are really doing is invalidating how that person feels. They're saying, "You can't feel bad or else I will feel bad." Just as they're taking responsibility for the other person's emotions, they're putting their own emotional responsibility onto that person. Instead, what they need to learn to do is separate how they feel from how the other person feels, and allow others to have whatever emotional responses they need to have. It's possible to empathize without trying to fix someone's mood and without internalizing it. Often, this is what will actually make others feel better. Sometimes South Node Cancer 4th house people grow up in environments with adults who did this to them. Their parent or caregiver blamed their own emotional problems and unhappiness on the South Node Cancer 4th house person, so that they grew up with an unrealistic belief that they could actually control others' feelings and were responsible for them. This is something they have to work hard to unlearn as adults. Until they do, they can carry an intense amount of guilt that they don't truly deserve. Of course, this can result in a level of hypervigilance in which they're constantly monitoring the emotional state of everyone in their environment. This becomes debilitating in places like classrooms or large crowds, and stresses the nervous system. Again, they have to practice separating themselves energetically from those around them and erecting strong boundaries to protect themselves. Meditations focused specifically on these topics can be hugely beneficial for them. Some are linked in the North Node Capricorn 10th house workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. These folks can also be so aware of the reasons people fail that they coddle others instead of empowering them. This sympathy extends to themselves too. It's very easy for them to excuse their own lack of accomplishment because they simply didn't feel good today or were too upset or not in the right headspace to do what they were supposed to do. But when they use emotional excuses to avoid their responsibilities, they only betray themselves. It's very common for South Node Cancer 4th house people's lack of boundaries to lead them to social mistakes. They tend to have an all-or-nothing approach to relationships. Either you're my friend and I tell you everything, or you're not my friend and I keep things professional and superficial. The problem is that there's no in-between, and it's too easy for people to move from the acquaintance category to the friend category. As a result, South Node Cancer 4th house people tend to overshare, then feel vulnerable, regretful, and even ashamed. especially when a friend betrays their confidence and gossips about them. In the past, these folks stayed home with their family and didn't see anyone else, so they are too used to being surrounded only by people they can trust. Learning that everyone is not so trustworthy is a very painful lesson for them. What helps is to set clear boundaries with themselves, to make rules about how quickly they can proceed in new relationships, what topics to avoid, etc. There are tips and guides on how to have boundaries in the North Node Capricorn 10th House workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. Releasing the past. South Node Cancer 4th house people tend to be very attached to their past. They define themselves by their personal narrative and constantly return to it. They don't want to forget anything, even the negative experiences, because that's where they get their sense of identity. Sometimes they want to cling to good memories because they fear the future. Sometimes they find the present unbearable and feel a need to escape into the past. Sometimes they use bad memories to punish themselves and use them as an excuse to avoid improving their lives. But of course, this only keeps them stuck in their past, unable to grow up or move forward. What they must learn is that the past is not real. Human memory is notoriously inaccurate. We cling to inaccurate stories about ourselves, building up a personal mythology that only serves as confirmation bias of how we want to see ourselves. Yes, even if we have a negative self-image. You see, even more than most people, South Node Cancer 4th house people become addicted to their feelings. Even painful feelings provide a kind of comfort zone. They get comfortable feeling uncomfortable. At worst, these folks get addicted to a life they hate. South Node Cancer 4th house people have to let go of their past in order to move forward. They cannot change the past, nor can they return to it, so there is not much point thinking about it. It is useful to analyze their past emotions, actions, and responses in order to learn lessons and draw conclusions, but once the lesson is learned they need to move on. The past is never occurring, the only thing that we are ever experiencing is the timeless now. Even when we remember something, we are remembering it now. More than other placements, South Node Cancer 4th house people run the risk of blaming all of their present problems on their past, their parents, their exes, anyone but themselves. What they need to realize is that while what happened to them might not be their fault, they are still the ones left holding the bag, and it's up to them to choose what to do with it. They could keep dragging it around, or responsibly unpack it, throw things away, and let it go. One way to think of it is that childhood is when we accumulate trauma, while adulthood is when we take responsibility for healing it, no matter who is to blame. This is why some people remain children all their lives, they never take responsibility for healing themselves. Belonging, commitment, and discernment. In the past, South Node Cancer 4th house people had a strong family unit and or clan with whom they developed deep emotional bonds and interdependent relationships. They took care of others and were taken care of in turn. They didn't have to worry about who to trust because everyone they knew depended on them and vice versa. Any betrayal would have been self-sabotaging. Because of this, they also don't control their emotional reactions in front of others as much as they should. They're accustomed to being in such a secure family unit that no matter what they did, they still survived and were loved and cared for. If they lost their temper and hurt someone, they were always forgiven. They had to be. In this lifetime, however, things are different. South Node Cancer 4th house people approach everyone with the trust, optimism, and naivete of a child. And they get burned. A lot. It's not uncommon for them to get burned by their own family members this time around. Life is trying to teach them how to be more discerning. And in this lifetime, there are real consequences to their misbehavior and emotional reactions. Deep down, these folks long to belong, and they fear that they don't. When they try to imitate others in order to be accepted, it backfires and they experience rejection. Whenever they purposely try to become part of a clique or group, people reject them in incredibly cruel ways. This can be extremely triggering for South Node Cancer 4th house people. They may have extreme emotional reactions. The issue is that they are trying to belong to a specific group when what they need to do is abandon that mentality and see that they belong to one universal group, life itself. They have spent too many past lives with this tribal mentality, and belonging to one group meant demonizing others. So this will only backfire on them in this life. South Node Cancer 4th house people have such a hard time letting go that they will cling to people and situations that they know no longer serve them way past their expiration date. They fear abandoning others and hate admitting they were wrong or that something is no longer working for them, so they hang in there until they are so exhausted they literally cannot continue any longer. Only once they've tried everything to make something work will they finally, reluctantly, let it go, but continue dwelling on it long after, still feeling guilty. But usually, it's not even their choice. If they hold on too long, sooner or later life intervenes and rips away whatever wasn't working for them. This can get pretty rough. What can prevent this is actually being more careful about what they commit to in the first place. This can be trickier than it seems, because it's not always a long-term relationship or a verbal commitment they're making, but an emotional one. Due to their lack of boundaries, these folks get quickly and easily emotionally enmeshed with others, and before they know it they are emotionally invested in all kinds of relationships and projects. One thing that can help them discern what to commit to and what not to commit to is a clear goal. When these folks have a clear goal for their life, or for each area of life, they can use it as a filter for potential commitments. For example, let's say the North Node Capricorn 10th house person has a goal to get physically healthy by the end of the year. A friend comes to them asking for help with a bake sale to raise money for a charitable cause. This is tough. Their Cancer South Node wants to help at all costs. But then they remember their health goal, and they know deep down that if they're surrounded by cakes and cookies, they won't have the self-control to stop themselves from indulging. So they can tell their friend, "Sorry, I can't help, but I'm happy to make a donation anyway. You don't have to give me anything." Staying goal-oriented helps these folks avoid draining themselves. When it comes to relationships, something that can help them exercise skepticism is to take note of people when they meet them or are first getting close to them. Through their superior powers of empathy, South Node Cancer 4th house people can generally trust their gut and get a good read on someone. They tend to have excellent intuition. Then they just have to keep their empathy in check. They must beware when they're making excuses for someone. For example, they might write in their journal about a new friend they've been hanging out with recently. Maybe they've noticed a red flag: this person gossips a lot. And they might be able to make a million excuses for this, including blaming themselves for participating in the gossip. But they need to pause and ask themselves, do I want to be friends with someone like this? In all likelihood, it's not a deal breaker. If they still choose to be friends with the person, they can ask, what safeguards or boundaries can I put in place to keep myself safe? Maybe they decide to stay away from certain topics so their friend can't betray their trust, or they decide to limit their conversations and interactions. Maybe they simply decide they don't know the person well enough to judge yet, and they need to take a wait-and-see approach. This is an example of how they can counsel themselves the way a parent would. In fact, it's very helpful for them to role-play with themselves in this way. When South Node Cancer 4th house people do find themselves in a commitment and realize it's not working for them, it can be very difficult to get out of it. They may simply feel that keeping their word is part of their integrity. And to a large extent, they're right, but part of having integrity involves doing things for the right reasons. Sometimes integrity is just the surface-level excuse they use when deep down they feel guilty, obligated, or even stubborn. They don't want to admit they made the wrong commitment and lose face. But humility is part of integrity, too. They have to be willing to step down. Even more deeply, they usually are gaining something from the situation, something material or just something emotional, even if it's just the emotional satisfaction of being a good person for staying. But this is moral posturing. No one likes to see themselves as the bad guy. But the North Node Capricorn 10th house person must learn to be okay with looking like the bad guy in order to do the right thing. Like Batman, they have to be the hero people need, not the one they want. These natives tend to make unnecessary commitments and carry them to an extreme. They make excessive sacrifices. They stay committed even after they realize it's no longer in their own best interest, or even in the other person's. For example, they may commit to a relationship and hang on for years, even decades, after they've fallen out of love with their partner. They never know when to cut their losses, and it leads them to lose far more than necessary, including years of their life. This is the sunk cost fallacy, the cognitive bias that we should continue pouring money, time, or effort into a situation since we've already sunk so much into it already. It's the justification a gambler makes for continuing to gamble, believing that since they've already lost $5,000, betting another $1,000 might somehow magically turn their luck around. This is one way that their emotions get in the way of right action. At some point, they must learn to distinguish between commitment and stubbornness. Another helpful question to ask themselves when they find themselves stuck in a commitment that's no longer working for them is this: are the other people involved in this situation as committed as I am, or am I the only one? Oftentimes, because they take so much responsibility for other people, those people put in less effort and are less committed than them, just because the South Node Cancer 4th house person lets people get away with it. The moment they step back, they will see if the others are truly as committed as they are. With the North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house, these folks are leaning that commitment has to go both ways. It's ineffective and irresponsible to commit to others who are not as committed as them. At some point, these folks must learn to unapologetically commit to themselves first. If they don't, no other success is possible. Empowering instead of enabling. Running a household and nurturing a family comes so naturally to South Node Cancer 4th house people that when they see others struggling to do the same, they can be very judgmental and critical. In doing so, they're actually taking their own talents for granted. They have to understand that not everyone shares their past life experience, and like them, everyone has something to learn in this life. In fact, a South Node Capricorn 10th house person might look at them in the workplace and judge them just as harshly. Instead of criticizing others, South Node Cancer 4th house people have the opportunity to uplift them with their gentle approach. They can lead by example. Then let others figure out their own way of doing the same. For example, a South Node Cancer 4th house person may have a sister who has a baby before she does. Suddenly her sister is a mother and householder, in charge of maintaining the home, taking care of herself, and taking care of the baby while her partner works. The South Node Cancer 4th house person is likely to have a whole list of things her sister is doing wrong. The floors aren't clean, the house is cluttered, she isn't eating well, she isn't getting the baby on a proper sleep schedule, etc. Instead of criticizing or trying to take over her sister's house by doing everything her own way, she can actually take a maternal approach to her sister, ask about her feelings, her struggles, what kind of help she might need, and if she wants to know how the South Node Cancer 4th house person herself would do things. With her sister's permission, she can show her 1 or 2 methods of cleaning efficiently or making a healthy meal. But it's crucial she avoids taking over her sister's responsibilities and instead empowers her sister to learn on her own. Otherwise, she would damage her relationship with her sister while also failing to help. These folks are also likely to be rescuers in love, likely because they had to rescue a parent or sibling when they were young. But when they try to rescue people, what they're really doing is avoiding responsibility for their own emotional issues. A lot of times, South Node Cancer 4th house people would rather take care of others than face themselves. It's easier. But this only keeps them stuck, unable to grow because they're neglecting themselves and unable to move forward because they're attached to someone who's holding them back. What these folks need to realize is that as long as they're taking responsibility for someone else, even just emotionally, they're enabling that person, too, to continue avoiding responsibility for themselves. They're enabling both themselves and the other person. Instead, South Node Cancer 4th house people need to shift their attitude from enabling to empowering. This is tough and requires a ton of honest reflection. They need to ask themselves what they're truly gaining from the situation and what they would have to deal with if they weren't involved. They have to ask if the person they're helping could figure things out on their own if they had no other choice. This is where things get tricky, because South Node Cancer 4th house people tend to see both themselves and others as helpless, if only subconsciously. Choosing an empowering attitude means choosing to believe in others, and themselves. Deep down, these folks don't trust their loved ones to take proper care of themselves, and that frightens them. But they must be brave and take a leap of faith, both for themselves and the people they love. Alternatively, they may be the ones who seek rescuers. Very often, these folks were not properly nurtured as children, and now they are incredibly sensitive and vulnerable, constantly craving the nurturing they should have received. But seeking this nurturing from others as an adult only backfires and results in rejection. As frustrating and cliché as it sounds, they must learn to nurture themselves. As in so many areas of life, South Node Cancer 4th house people need to learn to approach others from a position of authority, not need, because as long as we're coming from a position of need, we're not making a free choice. Because these folks have an unconscious expectation that someone else will take care of them, they often look for a partner who will do so, especially someone who is authoritative, mature, and in control. They want someone else to be the adult in the relationship so they don't have to be. Even so, they're likely to end up with the opposite, Even when they think they're choosing someone mature, they will eventually discover that their partner is very immature in their own ways, and the South Node Cancer 4th house person is the one who has to be the adult in the relationship. This is life admonishing them, it's time to grow up. South Node Cancer 4th house people are often very responsible when it comes to taking care of others or the details of life. Anything that someone else depends on is easy for them to prioritize, so they're usually pretty good at paying bills, cleaning the house, buying groceries, spending quality time with their loved ones, etc. However, if there's something they want to pursue purely for themselves, and which no one else is depending on, it's easy for them to deprioritize it because they have to do things for others first. Of course, this leads to the kind of caretaking issues we discussed above. Instead, what North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to do is see that everyone's primary responsibility is their own self. We were each born into this life as a unique individual, and our responsibility is to take care of that individual, to care for our bodies, minds, spirits, and emotions, to discover our authentic selves and fulfill that self's deepest desires. That means these folks need to let others take responsibility for their own selves, so they can take responsibility for themselves, too. The more they take responsibility for their own lives and success, the more self-respect North Node Capricorn 10th house people develop. Self-respect is an accurate barometer for whether or not they're on path. Their self-respect must be stronger than their feelings. No one else can accomplish the North Node Capricorn 10th house person's goals for them. Facing this fact can be very sobering for them. If they don't prioritize their own goals, dreams, and desires, they will likely never happen. No one is coming to accuse them. No one can do it for them. It's up to us. Praising progress. Capricorn is all about having a long-term vision of the future and working steadily towards it. So it's essential for North Node Capricorn 10th house people to ask themselves what they want their future to be, and how they can realistically achieve it. South Node Cancer 4th house people come into this life with such lofty and ambitious goals that take so long to achieve that they can easily get discouraged along the way. It's essential for them to log their progress as they go and make a practice of appreciating it. Sometimes it's their very attempts to improve themselves that trigger their insecurity and pessimism. For example, a South Node Cancer 4th house person who is trying to get into shape might finally work up the courage and energy to go to the gym, only to feel discouraged by all the fit, healthy people who do everything better and more easily than them, while they're out of breath and sweating like a pig. This makes them feel bad about themselves, and they get so down on themselves that they vow never to return to the gym. What a nefarious trick their mind is playing on them, to make their very pursuit of progress into discouragement. It's absolutely crucial that South Node Cancer 4th house people become aware of their emotions and these kinds of tricks their mind plays on them, because it's just a way for their ego to stay in its comfort zone where it never fails because it never tries. Instead, they again need to play parent to their inner child, since the ego often manifests as the wounded inner child, exercise patience, and praise themselves for their efforts even if they're not seeing the results they want yet. They need to practice encouraging themselves and above all, never give up. The next time they feel this way, they can catch themselves and say, "Hey, you showed up and that's more than most people ever do." If anything, simply going to the gym makes you more like those fit gym rats than like the couch potatoes at home, so you're already in the category of people you want to be with. Some, if not all, of them felt like you do when they first started, too. But they kept going and now look at them. If you stick with it too, you'll improve just like they did. Too often South Node Cancer 4th house people have the feeling that they should already be the end result of whatever they want to achieve, and they get frustrated when they keep seeing that they haven't arrived yet. They forget that everyone who reached the top of the mountain started at the bottom, too. As cliché as it is, it's all about the journey. After all, we don't criticize a 6-month-old for not walking yet. We understand that growth and progress take time. South Node Cancer 4th house people need to give themselves the same compassion, patience, and grace they so easily give to others. Leaving Neverland, the need for attention. South Node Cancer 4th house people never feel ready to strike out on their own in the real world. They always need more of something, more time, study, nurturing, confidence, before they feel ready. Nothing is ever enough for them, and no matter how much others give, or how good they get themselves, they never feel good enough to go out on their own. They are stuck in a Neverland mentality, forever seeing themselves as a child, never ready to be an adult. What they need to realize is that in this lifetime, feeling will come from action, not before action. They get caught in the trap of thinking they need to feel a certain way in order to be or do a certain thing. While there is some truth to this, they have so little practical experience out in the world that they have overdone the feeling part of life and need to compensate for that imbalance with action. In reality, the inner and outer processes are not separate, they make one unitive process. In other words, feeling leads to doing, which leads to feeling, which leads to more doing, and so on. They just need to start that cycle by acting. South Node Cancer 4th house people will never feel completely ready to do 100% of what they want to do, but they need to learn to take action on the first 10% when they feel ready for that 10%. Then, over time, they will gain confidence and eventually they will have done 100%, one step at a time. That's why they need to break down their big goals into small steps, and just focus on the next right step. A lot of this actually has to do with South Node Cancer 4th house people's deep need for attention. Often in early life, they either got too much or too little attention, so they either need to maintain an unrealistically high level or compensate for a lack. Either way, they often believe they deserve attention simply for who they are, not what they do. This comes from a good place. They see the intrinsic value in all living beings and have a deep understanding of unconditional love, so they naturally give it to others. Unfortunately, not everyone has learned this lesson, which is why South Node Cancer 4th house people can really lead by example. More than anyone else, they have a beautiful ability to make others feel unconditionally loved and valuable. With this strong foundation, they now need to learn a new lesson for themselves. They need to earn attention through action and accomplishment. Deep down, they resent the lack of praise and recognition for the efforts they've made in the past, especially during past lives as underappreciated maternal figures who did everything for everyone and only got taken for granted. They have spent many past lives doing unpaid labor, especially caretaking and emotional labor, often for people who relied on their support to go out into the world and make a name for themselves. Now it's the North Node Capricorn 10th house person's turn. Paradoxically, these folks also feel guilty for needing or wanting attention, seeing it as egoic, selfish, or otherwise impure. They may feel they don't deserve attention, perhaps because no one gave them enough when they were young, and create a self-fulfilling prophecy in which they actively reject or avoid attention. In truth, we all need attention. Ours is a hyper-social species, and receiving attention isn't simply a matter of ego, it's one of our most basic needs. We just have to go about it in the right way. In fact, babies who don't receive attention and affection suffer from marasmus, slowly dying from lack of attention even when all their nutritional and other needs are met. By acknowledging and embracing their need for attention, and removing judgment from it, North Node Capricorn 10th house people can begin to heal this wound. For North Node Capricorn 10th house people, this means earning attention through action and accomplishment, not through simply existing. Of course, as children and within our family unit we do deserve attention simply for being. This is the kind of love only our family, friends, and romantic partners can give us. In that close personal context, love is a natural fact of life, something we don't have to earn. But the 10th house is not about the personal realm of intimate relationships, it's about the public domain of status, career, and contribution to society. This is where North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to concentrate their efforts. In past lives, they fully mastered the 4th house of home and family, where they learned the principles of intrinsic value and unconditional love. Merely having a happy and fulfilling home life will no longer satisfy their need for attention, because the type of attention they need now is out there, the kind they have to earn. The problem is that they often bring this attitude of intrinsic value and unconditional love out into the public domain, and expect the world out there to love them simply for who they are. They expect perfect strangers to love them the way a mother should love a child. But this is not how society works. Society is a well-oiled, flawed but for the most part functioning, machine. It is where we have divided up the tasks of collaborative communal life and each must do their part to contribute. So North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to focus on their contributions if they want to receive the attention they deeply crave. This is not a relationship lifetime for these folks, it's a lifetime of power, action, and accomplishment. Of course they can still have fulfilling relationships and happy home lives, this is part of their karmic reward for past lifetimes. But the lesson they need to focus on now is making a valuable contribution to society, and earning attention through action. Paradoxically, what will help them do this more than anything is to nurture themselves, to give themselves the love, attention, recognition, and praise they so deeply desire from the public world. This alleviates their anxiety about receiving attention, because if they've already filled their own cup, they don't need anyone else to fill it for them. And as always, we can receive what we want once we no longer want it. South Node Cancer 4th house people can also deeply fear attention even as they desire it. They may judge others who receive or seek attention, seeing them as egotistical, desperate, and codependent. But this is merely a projection of their own shadow. Deep down, they are envious that someone else is receiving the attention and praise they crave themselves. Yet because they've projected these judgments onto others, they can't possibly pursue the same thing without feeling bad about themselves. This is very simple and obvious. For example, the South Node Cancer 4th house person might have a rivalry with a classmate. They are always second in the class, while the classmate always comes out on top. They envy this person and judge them for being a people-pleasing know-it-all who's always sucking up to the teachers and showing off. Yet deep down, the South Node Cancer 4th house person wants to be the one in the spotlight, receiving all the attention and praise. They believe they're the ones who deserve it. But they haven't done the work. If instead of envying the other person, they just ignored them and buckled down and focused on studying and creating their own success, they would eventually start to outshine the star pupil. They'd become the star pupil themselves. This is not a lifetime in which South Node Cancer 4th house people will get what they want simply because they want it or ask for it or believe they deserve it. They have to buckle down, work hard, and truly earn the attention and accolades they desire. Embracing one's own authority. South Node Cancer 4th house people have spent so many past lives as maternal caregivers that in this life, they likely either feel a deep desire to continue in this role or a strong conviction that they cannot go through that again. This conviction may even come from unconscious fears from past lives in which they died in childbirth, which can be a frightening prospect for them. It's also likely that they were sexually assaulted and became pregnant against their will, forced to raise a child whose very existence reminded them of their abuser. More than any other placement, South Node Cancer 4th house people carry the historic trauma of women and especially mothers. It's likely for South Node Cancer 4th house people to have either a perfect mother who they put on a pedestal, or one who was abusive herself. In the former case, it can be incredibly difficult for them to realize that their mother is, after all, an imperfect human being with flaws and a past of her own. In the latter case, complex post-traumatic stress disorder is likely. It is important for South Node Cancer 4th house people to explore and understand these issues, whether they want to become a parent or not. If they do, it's essential they heal their own trauma before becoming parents or as soon as they can if they've already had them. But healing is not a one-and-done task we can check off our to-do lists. It's a constant, ongoing practice. There are many tips and resources in the North Node Capricorn 10th House workbook on northnodesignandhouse.com. In this lifetime, South Node Cancer 4th House people actually need to become a parent to themselves first. They are moving from childhood to adulthood. Even though they may be adulting in small ways, paying the bills, cleaning the house, etc., they often fail to become full adults emotionally. Becoming an adult requires them to develop emotional self-control and commit to a goal. When they do this, everything falls into place quite easily. The goal fills them with a sense of purpose and vitality, and they feel motivated to move forward into the future instead of dwelling on the past, finally able to keep their emotions in check enough to take effective action without self-sabotage. In areas of life where they're not yet seeing the results they want, it helps to apply this habit of setting goals and committing to them. For instance, they might not have a friend group they feel they really fit in with. There are a couple goals they can set to change this. 1. To put themselves in new social contexts more frequently so they can meet new people, and 2. To develop stronger emotional boundaries so they don't get too close too fast to the wrong people, and instead have time to discern between who they do and don't want to befriend. Then they can set up some rules for achieving these goals. 1. Every week they will go to an event, like an art walk or car show, where they'll meet people who share their interests, and 2. They can avoid talking about their family history and interpersonal problems until they know they can trust someone with this information. By setting a goal, devising a strategy, and committing to new habits, they will have a whole new friend group in less than a year. The problem is that it's much easier for these folks to follow someone else and help that person towards their goal. They don't need the credit, nor the responsibility of being the ultimate authority. Plus, it helps them avoid the vulnerability of pursuing something for themselves. These folks have spent so many lives in the family unit, they're used to being guided by someone else, usually a patriarch. And they don't want the responsibility of being patriarch themselves. But that's exactly their task in this lifetime. Capricorn is the ultimate archetypal father placement. Those with their North Node here must become first a father to themselves, then to others, and sometimes, ultimately, to the world. In a childlike way, South Node Cancer 4th house people doubt their own competence, thinking they're supposed to know things they can't possibly know yet. This can keep them stuck in a student mentality in which they're always trying to gather more information before they move out into the real world. What they don't realize is that most of the learning happens on the job. Everyone, including adults, are learning and adapting as they go. As a result, it's easy for South Node Cancer 4th house people to externalize authority and ignore their own inner authority. They're constantly looking for someone to hold their hand and guide them. They blindly follow experts and teachers while ignoring their own inner wisdom. Very often, their intuition is more accurate than any external authority. In this lifetime, the need for a teacher, guide, or mentor will only lead them astray. Their methods will backfire and they'll go off track of their life purpose. They have to learn to see themselves as the only valid authority of their own life. Financial independence. These folks have a deep need for security, but like many other things, they're used to having someone else provide it for them. However, in this lifetime they're meant to be the ones who provide for others. Financial independence does not always come easily for South Node Cancer 4th house people. In the past, they always had someone else to support them financially and they have little or no experience making their own way in the world. Early in this life, they may have been forced to survive on their own financially, or even to support others before it was their time. Otherwise, it may take them a long time to truly leave the nest, financially as well as physically. Deep down, they may harbor subconscious negative beliefs around money. They may feel guilty for earning or even wanting money, associating it with impurity and materialism. The truth is, they have only known the dark side of money. In the past, they saw how greed or simply the need to make a living took their loved ones away from them and their families. Like children, they didn't understand the necessity of placing an income before a relationship, and resented it. They didn't see that money was an essential part of the ability to have a relationship in the first place. As a result, they may view wealthy people as somehow evil. They might believe that one can only accumulate wealth by doing harmful things to people, planet, and animals. Money is therefore tainted for them. This may also lead them to be overly generous, even beyond their means, giving lavish gifts to show their love for someone, or feeling so guilty when they encounter someone who has less than them that they give away more than they can afford. These are the shirt off my back kind of people. This generosity reveals an inherent contradiction. If giving materially is a token of their love and affection, then receiving materially must relate to the ability to receive emotionally. While their emotional nature can hold them back in so many areas of life, it actually helps North Node Capricorn 10th house people to take an emotional and energetic approach to money, to see it as a positive flow of loving energy that needs to stay in circulation so that everyone can benefit. This shift also helps them cultivate an abundance mindset. We can always create more love in the world simply by choosing to be loving. We can do the same with money. Once North Node Capricorn 10th house people begin to see money as a form of love and gratitude, it flows to them much more easily, and it is easier for them to accept it. They are no longer selling their time in exchange for a paycheck, they are putting love out into their world through their hard work, and others reciprocate with love and gratitude in the form of remuneration. Money is simply a natural consequence of their love. Consciously or not, South Node Cancer 4th house people expect to be rescued. They think someone will come along and take care of all their material needs forever. But this is not the case. In fact, for them to accept this would go against their karmic lessons. Even if they don't have to, it's essential for them to support themselves financially. It's part of growing up. House, home, and work-life balance. South Node Cancer 4th house people easily isolate themselves at home, by themselves or with family or chosen family. On the plus side, unless they have contradictory factors in their birth chart, they can have great real estate karma. They know how to create beautiful and harmonious house and give others the tremendous gift of feeling at home. This is some of the gold in the shadow of Cancer that they can bring forth and give to others. They may make great real estate agents, interior designers, cooks, or maids. They likely excel in any profession in hospitality. However, they must be careful not to isolate themselves at home. It keeps them from expanding and taking charge of their lives. While they can successfully work from home, it's essential they push themselves to go out into the world and interact with the public. If they can, it's even better for them to keep their office or business away from home. This axis is largely about balancing work and family, goals and comfort. It's also a leadership axis, so if anyone can do it all, it's North Node Capricorn 10th house people. Subconsciously, these people may resist their own ambitions out of fear that pursuing them means giving up something even more important, family and relationships. In the past, they were the ones who were neglected while their partner or parent went out and made a success of themselves. As a consequence, they may see ambition as a quality that hurts loved ones. However, this is a false dichotomy they've set up in their mind, seeing work and relationships as two opposing forces. The truth is that things are much more blended than they appear. In the first place, of course, neither they nor their family can survive if no one provides for them. Work is not only an expression of love for others, but also a form of self-care. That's right, work is a form of self-care. Equally, working requires them to develop relationships with their colleagues, customers, and more broadly, the world. It requires them to develop a symbiotic relationship with society at large. Of course, there are only 24 hours in a day and we must always make trade-offs, but framing our daily decisions within the context of a broader value system in which we understand the interconnectedness of all our relationships and activities makes those decisions much easier. As with other areas of life, it also helps North Node Capricorn 10th house people to take the long view. We can't have everything all at once in life. It would overwhelm us if we were at the peak of our career while we also had young children and elderly parents to care for and were in the heady early stages of a new romantic relationship while working on our master's degree. That's like trying to eat an appetizer, main course, dessert, and aperitif all at once. Instead, they must recognize that there are different seasons in life, and what matters is that we appreciate whatever season we're in as long as we're in it. They might not flow in the normal order or be the same as our peers, but each is valuable and important. North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to guard against the fear of missing out of a particular season and make the most of the one they're in, trusting that life will come to them in the right time. It's helpful to review the life stages, ashramas, of Hinduism, childhood and studenthood, householding and career making, spiritual reflection and relaxation, and finally renunciation, charity, and enlightenment. There is a season for everything in life, and each one can wait until we're ready. In fact, these folks have earned karmic rewards in the form of emotional support, because they have spent past lives in nurturing, self-sacrificing roles that enabled someone else to go out and pursue a career. Others now owe them the same emotional support in return. While no one will pay their bills for them forever, it's likely that life will bring them people who support their dreams and ambitions, and believe in them even when they don't believe in themselves. Such people are an enormous blessing. Often, these folks have an excessive sense of responsibility when it comes to home and family. They think they have to be responsible for everything, everyone's physical and emotional health, the health of their pets, the cleanliness and maintenance of the home, everything. Very often, these are illusory obligations and they need to learn to delegate, let the little things go, and allow others to pick up the slack. Subconsciously, they take responsibility for what comes most easily to them, homemaking and caretaking, as an excuse to avoid what they feel less confident doing, pursuing a career out in the world. When they feel the urge to go into a cleaning frenzy or cook a big dinner nobody asked for, they need to stop and ask themselves what they're avoiding. If they don't, they can end up wasting years of their lives scrubbing the floor instead of building their dream business. Then blame their family for their own failure. Since South Node Cancer 4th house people bring so much emotional intelligence into this life, they can be incredibly effective leaders who approach others with sensitivity and tenderness. In fact, Cancer is one of the most frequent sun signs of US presidents. Their empathy is to their advantage as long as they don't use it to try to control or fix people. One great healing affirmation for them is I cannot control others, but I can control myself. They must not abuse their powers of emotional intelligence like they did in the past, or it will backfire. In fact, the reverse works well for them too, running their family like a business. This doesn't mean detaching emotionally and becoming authoritarian, but simply approaching them with the intent to empower them to do their jobs, and then trusting them to do so. They have to learn to approach others from a position of authority, not need. The irony is that these folks actually make the best bosses. Their emotional attunement to others means that they can easily lead without diminishing others or disempowering them, and they can achieve great success without alienating anyone along the way. They can truly lift all boats with their own rising tide, and others will reciprocate their support. Leaving home. Sometimes South Node Cancer 4th house people repeatedly try to leave home before they're truly ready, even well into adulthood. They may keep leaving, only to fail in the world and have to come back to the nest. This can mean that there are South Node Cancer 4th house successes at play, which they need to rein in. For example, they may lose their job because they burned out or had an emotional explosion. They may feel compelled to come home because things aren't being taken care of exactly the way they want. They simply still feel safer at home and afraid of being out in the world, so they subconsciously sabotage themselves. They need to be honest with themselves about what the pattern is and who is really the cause. South Node Cancer 4th house people's fear of failure, more than most placements, can prevent them from ever even trying to accomplish their goals. Of course, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. These folks never feel ready for the real world and their mind will produce excuse after excuse to keep them from getting out there. The voice that says don't do it is really saying don't grow up. Whether they need to take care of someone else, need more training, or something else, they are always holding themselves back. Then they look back on their lives with regret. By the time they're finally ready, they may still find another excuse, they're too old to try now. This reflects their subconscious resistance to growing up. The problem is that they've internalized external voices, even those from past lives, that wanted to keep them protected and under control at home. Whether it was a domineering partner or an overprotective parent, they've been instilled with a subconscious fear of leaving home. In fact, South Node Cancer 4th house people often resent, consciously or subconsciously, one or both of their parents. They may think their parents didn't adequately prepare them for the world, didn't give them enough support, or didn't allow them to be who they truly wanted to be, instead trying to shape the South Node Cancer 4th house person in their own image. In a subconscious attempt to punish their parents for this injustice, they sabotage themselves and keep themselves from reaching their goals. That way they can always blame their parents for their own failures. It takes great humility and maturity for these folks to set aside their victim mentality and put their own self-respect and self-interest above their need to be right and to punish others. To do this, they have to let go of the past and their resentments. In fact, these folks are unlikely to reach success until they are older, but if they sincerely and persistently try their best, success is guaranteed. The roles they usually seek actually require the power, credibility, and maturity that age brings. Deep down, they know they can never be happy without at least trying to achieve their goal, and the pain of the regret over not trying would be much worse than the pain of failure. No matter how long they postpone taking action, they always reach a point when they realize they just have to go for it. And it's better they do it sooner rather than later. Once they take action and put themselves out in the world will validate their efforts. But by then they will feel so in control of their own lives that they won't need the validation. Direct communication. While South Node Cancer 4th house people are very empathetic, their emotional sensitivity can backfire when they are in a negative or insecure state of mind. When they themselves are not emotionally healthy, they project their insecurities, fears, and anxieties onto ambiguous situations and assume they are negative. Because they don't know how to pull back, depersonalize, and view others objectively, they can easily draw the wrong conclusions. For example, the South Node Cancer 4th house person might have a crush on someone. But their crush gets very anxious around them and even avoids them. If the South Node Cancer 4th house person feels insecure about their looks and self-worth, they will project that onto their crush and assume the person doesn't like them back. In fact, the opposite may be true. Their crush gets anxious because they like the South Node Cancer 4th house person, and runs away from the anxiety. If the South Node Cancer 4th house person steps back, depersonalizes the situation, and sticks to the objective facts, they might realize that their crush's avoidance is a sign of their anxiety, which signifies that they might actually like the South Node Cancer 4th house person. Then they can set a goal to help their crush feel less anxious around them, and devise a strategy to do so, by giving small but encouraging signs, slowly, over time. If they're not sure, direct communication is their best bet. They often imagine so many negative reasons why someone would react badly to them that they assume the person just doesn't like them. It's better for them to approach the person directly and ask gently for an explanation of the confusing behavior. In fact, it's quite easy for South Node Cancer 4th house people to be confused by others' communication, not because they're dumb, but because they're so perceptive. Even on a subconscious level they notice people's words, emotional energy, and body language, including the way all these signals contradict one another. They sense when someone is just being polite to them even when the person doesn't really like them, or when someone has feelings for them but is pushing them away. But they can go into a spiral of confusion in their own minds due to these mixed signals, with their intuition telling them one thing and their logic saying the opposite. If they receive mixed signals like this, their best bet is still direct communication. Hey, it seems like you want X. Is that right? However, there is a tough lesson these folks need to accept in this life, that the physical, 3D reality is the final authority, not the emotional truths they detect underneath. Feelings and physical reality are two different things, and we live in a 3D physical reality. This is very difficult for South Node Cancer 4th house people. For them, the truth is the emotional truth, not the surface level interactions. But they must learn to take people at face value. For better or worse, the truth will reveal itself in time. Continuing with the example of the anxious crush above, it may be that their crush remains anxious and avoidant no matter how hard the South Node Cancer 4th house person tries to ease their anxiety. Even if they feel the person is their soulmate, the fact is that the person's ego is not capable of accepting their feelings and entering a relationship with them. They may need to be with someone for whom they have less intense feelings, and therefore less anxiety. This can be brutally painful for the South Node Cancer 4th house person, because they're aware of the emotional reality, and they want the truth to win by manifesting in the physical world. But that's not what they're here to learn in this lifetime. They must learn to let others make their own choices, to take responsibility for their own emotions, and accept the 3D reality for what it is. Love is unconditional, but relationships are very conditional, and just because two people love each other doesn't mean they can or should be in a relationship. In past lives, South Node Cancer 4th house people got their needs met through indirect, passive-aggressive, or even manipulative means. In this life, it's likely they'll encounter that same behavior in others. It's meant to show them how harmful it can be, and to push them to step up and lead by example by communicating directly. These folks are learning to attune to others' actual responses, not to the feelings they believe are underneath. As in all areas of life, it really helps them to set a specific goal before embarking on a task, errand, or conversation. Having a defined goal helps them remain objective, stick to the point, and avoid having an emotional reaction. The sheer energy of their intention can be enough to create the outcome they desire. Integrity. At its best, the Capricorn archetype is the embodiment of an ideal masculine authority, one who leads with integrity, provides for others, and protects those who cannot protect themselves. The foundation for all that they do is a deep sense of integrity, which also gives them confidence, power, and self-respect. South Node Cancer 4th house people have not learned this yet. It's not that they necessarily lack integrity, but they might not be clear about it. In the past, they were not the moral authority of their household, someone else was, and they obeyed that person while providing the more emotional nurturing that others needed. Before becoming an authority to others, North Node Capricorn 10th house people must become their own inner authority. They can begin by examining their own values and deciding what moral code they want to live by. It's important that they don't preach. Instead, they have to truly walk the talk and lead by example, not by word alone. Integrity begins with humility. Often these folks fear revealing their feelings of incompetence. They are too proud to admit when they don't know something. But this is the wrong approach. Instead, they need to begin from a place of humility, and admit they don't have all the answers. Accountability is another major issue for South Node Cancer 4th house people. Others may get away with poor behavior, but not these folks. In this life, they won't be able to escape the consequences of their actions. That's why it's so important for them to live by their own moral code. It's a valuable exercise for North Node Capricorn 10th house people to reflect on their values as well as the hierarchy of those values. For example, they might value both loyalty and honesty, but what happens when these two are in conflict, like if a friend asks them to lie for them? Do they prioritize loyalty to their friend and tell the lie, or do they prioritize honesty and betray their friend? This is not merely a philosophical exercise for North Node Capricorn 10th house people. Determining their personal moral code gives them a guideline to live by and makes their decisions much easier. Happily, they also end up leading others by their example. Cultivating optimism. With their innately nurturing energy, South Node Cancer 4th house people have a unique talent for encouraging others. They have an unparalleled mind-feeling connection that can do wonders when they channel it positively. More than anyone else, they can truly benefit from the power of positive thinking and law of attraction. However, the opposite is equally true. Just as they can benefit from the placebo effect, South Node Cancer 4th house people can suffer from the nocebo effect. When they turn pessimistic and dwell on the potential negatives of a situation, they inadvertently create the outcomes they fear. Even worse, they can pass this self-fulfilling pessimism on to others. They think they're protecting people from being hurt later on, but really they're infecting the other person with their own inner critic. North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to focus only on possibilities and positive results. This doesn't mean they shouldn't consider and safeguard against potential setbacks, but they need to keep their negativity in an objective frame while allowing themselves to cultivate optimism and an abundance mindset. Focusing too much, especially emotionally, on the negative only drains them of the energy they need to succeed. South Node Cancer 4th house people must learn to distinguish between productive and unproductive emotions and to stop indulging in the unproductive ones. The unproductive ones often paralyze them into inaction, particularly fear, guilt, shame, and insecurity. It's very easy for them to slip into a negative spiral and become so paralyzed by these feelings that it feels impossible for them to take action. If this happens at the wrong time, it can seem to ruin their lives as their lack of emotional self-control leads them to sabotage rare opportunities in love or business. They get so lost in their own self-loathing that they push away the very person they have a crush on or leave a prestigious school they worked so hard to get into, all because they didn't feel good enough. It's essential these folks learn to manage their emotions and cultivate a positive outlook. From controlling to managing. Instead of controlling themselves and their own emotional reactions, South Node Cancer 4th house people tend to try to control others in order to stop people from triggering them. Of course, this is like treating the symptoms instead of the cause. It's also impossible, a strategy doomed to fail. When it comes to dealing with other people, North Node Capricorn 10th house folks will achieve better outcomes when they use a managerial approach instead of a controlling one. They need to come from a mental place instead of an emotional one. They also need to be real with themselves about what is within and outside of their control. They cannot control others' behavior, only try to motivate or discourage them. The same goes for their inner life. Discipline and self-mastery are key to North Node Capricorn 10th house people's success. However, this doesn't mean they have to take a harsh, rigid approach to themselves and just punish themselves into productivity. It's more about understanding and regulating their inner world, by effectively managing their thoughts, feelings, and reactions. Time and again, their emotions will undermine their success until they master them. Part of this involves standing up for themselves. In past lifetimes, these folks were too submissive and often trusted someone else to decide what was real and valid. Now they are learning to give themselves some credit. Very often, South Node Cancer 4th house people have a level of emotional perception that others do not possess. Yet others will try to invalidate their perceptions, overtly or covertly, because they are hiding their own emotional truths. While the South Node Cancer 4th house person should still be skeptical and try not to make assumptions, when they have done their due diligence and are certain of their conclusion, they can trust it. However, they must accept that others are not as perceptive as them. They must make peace with their own perceptions and learn to validate themselves, without seeking external validation. A good example is favoritism at school. The South Node Cancer 4th house person is likely to pick up on small indications of preferential treatment that go unnoticed by others. However, if they speak up, it's unlikely to go well. Others will think they are being too sensitive and seeing things that aren't there. This makes the South Node Cancer 4th house person doubt their own perception of reality, which has a damaging ripple effect on their lives. Instead, they need to learn to trust their intuition, without needing others to validate it. Viewing their intuition as hypothesis and taking a wait-and-see approach can help if they're not sure. Instead of turning to others for validation, they simply need to wait and see if more proof emerges. Once others see it too, the South Node Cancer 4th house person can actually validate them. Then, collectively, the students can speak up. Otherwise the South Node Cancer 4th house person risks playing Cassandra. Letting go of emotions. These folks are deeply in touch with themselves and their emotions in a way that other people are not. In fact, it may seem to them that everyone else is very superficial or unconscious. However, this constant contact with their emotional currents means that they lose their cool easily and struggle to maintain the facade that others so easily put up. Having an emotional reaction at work is especially difficult for them. It's hard for them to hide when they're hurt or angry. For as much as they may try to control others' feelings, they don't control their own very well. Emotions are not something we choose to feel, though. It's not like South Node Cancer 4th house people want to cry or lose their temper at work or in front of friends or family. So what helps is to understand what emotions actually are and how to get ahead of them. Emotions are energy in the body, and we hold different emotions in different parts of our body, emotions that have been repressed and built up over the course of our lives. When a thought, person, event, or situation triggers an emotion, it taps into all the other times we felt that way, and we remember other events and situations that confirm that emotion is real for us. So when a colleague rejects our attempt to sit with them at lunch, we remember all the other times we felt rejected, and it can be overwhelming for South Node Cancer 4th house people because they feel so deeply and so easily. Once we remember all the other times we felt rejected, it worsens that feeling and seems to validate it. Thus our mind concludes, everyone always rejects me. But this, we also know, is not true. We have a negativity bias. We remember the bad feelings but not the good, and we see discouraging signs more than encouraging ones. The other problem is that there is so much emotional energy for the mind to tap into in the body, so much we have not fully released. So we have to practice letting go. This is a technique described by Dr. David Hawkins in his book Letting Go, which can be immensely helpful for getting ahead of negative emotions so they don't sabotage our lives. When we feel triggered into an intense emotional reaction, we need to isolate ourselves and allow ourselves to feel what's coming up. We need to put the focus on the physical feeling in the body and keep our focus on that, without getting caught up in thoughts of the situations and memories of other times we felt this way. The problem is that when we think about or even ruminate on our past and other times we've felt this way, our mind is actually numbing the feeling itself. We are slipping into the trap of thinking our emotions rather than actually feeling them. But only feeling them will allow them to dissipate, thinking them will keep the emotions repressed in the body, while simultaneously giving us the illusion of relief. The thing is, thinking doesn't make the feeling go away. So when we feel triggered, we have to isolate ourselves and put our focus on the physical feeling of the emotion in the body, allowing ourselves to feel it fully without getting distracted by words and thoughts. This results in an intensification of the emotion, which can be alarmingly painful. But if we stick with it, if we're doing it right, no intense emotional reaction lasts more than 20 minutes at most. It can be an exhausting and sometimes even frightening process, but it's worth it. As we make a habit of releasing trapped emotion, there is less and less of it swirling around in the body. When future triggers come up, the emotional reaction is less and less intense as we release more and more. This is a liberating process, and South Node Cancer 4th house people will be surprised by how their lives transform, by how things that once bothered them no longer upset them, by how they begin to forget the things they used to dwell on. Eventually we become free, and are no longer triggered into overreacting. It's important to note that one should not purposely try to trigger an emotion by thinking their way into it, but simply recognizing when an emotional reaction comes up organically and taking the time out to fully feel it. Of course, this isn't always possible in the moment. Sometimes we have to wait for the end of the workday when we can get in our car, go park somewhere quiet, and scream and cry as much as we need before going home to our families. Is it fun? No. Does it improve our stability and happiness in the long term and have a positive ripple effect across our lives and other people? Yes. Developing emotional control. South Node Cancer 4th house people will always be victimized by their own emotions until they learn to control them. This doesn't mean repressing their feelings, though, which would obviously backfire. Instead, They need to learn to not let their emotions lead the way, because that's how they lose in this life. Developing emotional self-awareness is one thing, but actually practicing it on a moment-to-moment basis is very difficult. As we go about our day, we can't always address a feeling in the moment. Things build up, and at the end of the day we explode, usually on the people we love most and dearly don't want to hurt. Hawkins' letting go technique described above is very helpful in the long term, but in the short term, South Node Cancer 4th house people need to develop techniques of cooling off. There are many suggestions for this in the North Node Capricorn 10th house workbook on northnodeSignAndHouse.com. These folks can be very emotionally reactive, and it's easy for any human being to confuse their feelings with the facts. Oftentimes we think because we feel an intense emotion, it must be reflecting some kind of truth to us. But this isn't the case. North Node Capricorn 10th house people have to develop a skeptical attitude towards their emotions. When someone says something that offends them and their ego gets all ruffled, they need to pause, hold their tongue, and tell themselves, or the other person, if necessary, that they need to think about this topic and will get back to them later with a response. Time can be on their side if they let it. When they remember that their first response is not necessarily an accurate response, they've already made a big step forward in helping themselves. Instead of reacting from the place of their inner child, North Node Capricorn 10th house people need to assume the role of the parent, to notice how their inner child is reacting to something, deduce what that really means, assess what action to take if any, and then take that action when they're in the right mindset and the time is right. For example, let's say that the South Node Cancer 4th house person's brother drank all their orange juice, which they were saving for a party. They feel enraged. He always does this, he's so selfish and thoughtless and greedy, and now the South Node Cancer 4th house person has to go out and get more juice, which isn't fair because they paid for the one their brother drank, etc. They have an urge to march right down to their brother's room right now, bang on the door, and yell at him. How would a good parent respond to a child reacting this way? They might say, "Wait a minute, take a moment, calm down." They might validate the child's feelings by saying, "I know it's not fair because you spent your own money on that orange juice. You're stressed out because you have this party coming up and you feel pressured to make it perfect. This is also something your brother has done before, so it's not just about the orange juice, it's about a deeper conflict of values." But then they might temper the child's assumptions. "You don't know why your brother drank the orange juice. Maybe he has a fever and was panicking, and thought drinking the juice would boost his immune system. Maybe he's already gone out now to get you more. Maybe it wasn't even him." They might do something to soothe the South Node Cancer 4th house person into a calmer state of mind. Let's watch a funny video. Let's go outside for a walk. Let's lie down for 20 minutes and listen to music. Once they feel better, they can help the South Node Cancer 4th house person assess what they should do. Should they go buy more orange juice and not say anything? Should they approach their brother and ask if he drank the juice? They might find that if they simply ask their brother if it was him, he might respond, "Yes, I'm so sorry, I was really dehydrated after my run and the water filter was broken so I couldn't drink water, and the orange juice was the only thing available. I'll get you more in time for your party." Noticing when they are going into a childlike emotional reaction and making assumptions, and pausing to parent themselves when they do, can save the South Node Cancer 4th house person a ton of trouble, stress, and damaged relationships. Otherwise they live their lives constantly victimized by their own feelings. Often these folks think they are bad communicators, but this is only true when they are coming from an emotional place. Once they learn to recognize in the moment when they're reacting emotionally, they'll be able to control it. When they shift instead to a mental, adult state, they communicate extremely well. Like all things with this placement, this improves with age. With experience, they learn to mellow out and stop taking everything so personally. They're able to stop placing so much blame on other people, and on themselves. Then they can take a broader, more compassionate view, and communicate with others from a more objective and kind perspective. Time is on their side in this life. Capricorn and the 10th house are ruled by Saturn, otherwise known as Father Time. When South Node Cancer 4th house people have an emotional reaction, they can be overwhelmed by emotional interference and unable to see clearly enough to make a decision. Their best bet is to take at least 24 hours to process their emotions and clear their mind before responding. Setting a defined goal can help enormously with this. A goal provides clarity that cuts through all the emotional interference. For example, the South Node Cancer 4th house person may have a conflict with their partner over household chores, feeling like they do more than their fair share while their partner does nothing. What they want to do is point out the emotional reality underneath. I am so selfless and diligent and responsible, and you are so self-absorbed and lazy. They want to make it personal because they genuinely believe that by pointing out the emotional reality, their partner will see the underlying issue and change their behavior, not just in this way but in other ways, too. However, that's not going to work. Their partner will just feel attacked and they might say something like, "Why don't you just ask me to do stuff?" The South Node Cancer 4th house person needs to take a step back, depersonalize, and decide on their goal, to get their partner to divide the household chores more equally. They know their partner is a forgetful person and that writing things down helps them, so they devise a strategy to sit down together over coffee the next morning, lovingly explain what their goal is, and ask if keeping a list or chart or even an app would help them remember their tasks. They can adapt to whatever method works for their partner, and ultimately, they'll achieve their goal. Through doing this, their partner will develop a habit of collaboration and more equal division, and is more likely to repeat it in other areas of life. Cutting straight to the emotional core of a situation doesn't always teach other people the lessons they need to learn. South Node Cancer 4th house people are learning that others learn through doing. Emotion doesn't always come first for everyone, but people can learn through other means. The feeling can come from the doing, not only the other way around. South Node Cancer 4th house people are learning to see this is true not just for others, but for themselves as well. From unity consciousness to separation consciousness. At the heart of every religion and spiritual faith, and even of physics and biology, is the knowledge that all that lives emerged from a single source, whether we call it God or the singularity that preceded the Big Bang or life itself. This vague idea is almost universally agreed upon. What Buddhism calls unity consciousness is not only the intellectual awareness of this inherent oneness, but the emotional, psycho-spiritual experience of it, and it is the subject of enlightenment. Yet we are all born into physically separate bodies and raised in cultures and societies that teach us separation consciousness, a state reinforced by our egoic minds and their instinct for self-preservation. This is the belief that all we are is separate from other people, other animals, the earth itself, and the universe at large. When it comes to the nodal axis of astrology, it is my belief that some are born with easier access to unity consciousness than others due to past lifetimes spent in spiritual study, emotional enmeshment, or another kind of merging. These include the water south nodes and some of the air and fire south nodes, including the south node and Libra in the 7th house. Although we may forget unity consciousness, these folks are among those who subconsciously remember it and can easily access it. It is good even for these placements to strive for the experience of unity consciousness. But once remembered, they must confront the harsh truth of physical reality, that we exist in a material world, in separate bodies. Separation consciousness is often dismissed as an illusion of the physical world and egoic mind, but we incarnate separately for a reason, to learn our nodal lessons, to evolve consciousness, to ascend spiritually. We are here precisely to experience separation. While most of the world needs to learn unity consciousness, for North Node Capricorn 10th house people, their lesson is also about separation consciousness. They have spent so many lifetimes emotionally merging with others that they have not adequately experienced the pleasure, vitality, and willpower of having a separate ego, self, and destiny. It is beautiful and fulfilling to be part of the whole, but each part must also be recognized as beautiful and fulfilling in itself. That is the point of separate incarnations. We each have a duty to know, respect, care for, and fulfill the highest potential of the part of the whole that is uniquely ourselves. This is one reason Know Thyself was inscribed upon the Temple of Apollo at Delphi. It is in many ways our sacred responsibility. The ultimate fulfillment of spiritual awareness may just be that both unity and separation are true, and to hold both states of consciousness simultaneously as we move through life, elevating neither one over the other but learning to live as both. The gold in the shadow. Before we conclude, I want to remind you to appreciate the gold in the shadow of your South Node in Cancer in the 4th house. One of the most beautiful things about people with the South Node in Libra in the 7th house is that love comes so naturally to them. Love shines through them and they pass it on to most of the people they meet. It is in their nature. That's why they can trust their intuition. Their intuition is rooted in love and empathy. No one who encounters these folks can fail to notice, if only on a subconscious level, the essence of love within them. South Node Cancer 4th house people have an incredible ability to nurture and care for others. It's so natural to them that they don't know how special they are, or how much they improve others' lives through their daily gestures of thoughtfulness and affection. Anyone who lives or partners with a South Node Cancer 4th house person is incredibly lucky. These folks are not materialistic, they see into the emotional reality of every situation and understand what's truly important, connecting with others, making them feel seen and heard. While it can make them feel lonely when they're the only ones who see the emotional truth of things, when they learn to communicate well they can illuminate people's deep emotional core and heal them from the inside out. These are the psychological healers of humankind. Our South Node isn't only about what we get wrong or do to excess, it also includes what we've mastered and can teach to others. No quality is wholly good or bad, but each one has both a light and a dark manifestation. Once we learn how to express our South Node in a healthy way with good boundaries, aware of its dark side, we can reach back for the gold in the shadow and share its light. We can teach others the skills we've mastered, leading by example and helping others learn their Cancerian lessons. Once it is balanced, our South Node also becomes the foundation for our North Node. As with everything, each archetype contains the seed of its opposite, like the yin-yang symbol. It is precisely because South Node Cancer 4th house people understand love and the needs of others so well that they are able to turn their skills inward and finally give themselves what they've hitherto only given others. It is through this balance they can finally achieve the recognition for which their soul deeply yearns. Further practice and inquiry. I hope this ebook has been illuminating for you on your personal quest for growth. In all my work, my goal is to help raise the collective level of human consciousness. We are each responsible for doing so, by taking responsibility for our own individual piece of consciousness. With the information I've communicated here, I hope you feel more empowered to take care of your own. I wish to communicate a few more things to look for which may be helpful. First, I didn't just want to dump theory on you. As I wrote these ebooks, I realized there were so many references, books, videos, podcasts, as well as reflection questions and practical actions, that could help you think and problem solve in even more ways, in ways I didn't have the space to delve into in this ebook alone. Conscious of the fact that reading theory is just the tip of the iceberg, I wanted to give you practical ways of applying your new knowledge to your life specifically. That's why I created a workbook for each nodal placement on northnodesignandhouse.com. Recommendations for books, movies, videos, podcasts, and more provide food for thought and explorations of the Cancer 4th house/Capricorn 10th house themes. Journal prompts and activity recommendations lead you off of the screen and into the world, where you can be empowered to make a difference in your own life. Even though this book series on the nodes specific to sign and house is a huge leap forward in the collective project of astrological study, each chart is so completely unique that there are still more factors that may influence your specific experience. For some, the path is easier, for others, it seems to be blocked at every turn. While I don't want to overwhelm you with information, focusing simply on the information above is already an enormous project. If you ever feel blocked or confused, here are a few keys in your chart to consider. First, consider your big three, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant, in context of your nodal placement. Ask yourself, why would a soul with these nodal challenges choose a personality with these big three? For example, a North Node Capricorn 10th house person is most likely to have an Aries ascendant, and let's say they have a Cancer Sun with a Pisces Moon. With an Aries ascendant, the midheaven is likely to also be in Capricorn, so the Sunday may be in the 4th house and the Moon may be in the 12th. This person likely spent their early life in a combative environment that required them to stand up and fight for themselves, leveraging their anger for self-protection. But inside, they were deeply wounded by what happened. The Cancer Sun indicates that they still needed to bring some of their tender, empathic skills into this life, intensified by the Pisces Moon. With the midheaven in Capricorn, and the Sun opposite, perhaps near the IC and South Node, this person is meant to become a strong leader and authority in their career. With the strength of their ascendant, they are likely to be a pioneer or thought leader of some kind. But the South Node, Sun, and Moon all hold them back. The North Node indicates the need for emotional self-control, strength, and determination, including in their career, and their double water Sun/Moon make them fast, intuitive readers of other people. This person can leverage their empathic nature and strong facade to navigate their professional world, but it won't be easy. They're still very attached to home. Second, consider any aspects made to the nodes, less than 4 degrees. You can find plenty of articles online by searching for any relevant aspects, but for the sake of simplicity I will note here that harmonious aspects, trines and sextiles, help, conjunctions challenge, and squares indicate a skipped step, a karmic lesson one completely missed and must redo. In our hypothetical Cancer Pisces chart, let's suppose the Cancer Sun is conjunct the South Node and opposite the North Node. Remember, an aspect to one end of the nodal axis is simultaneously an aspect to the other end, the Sun representing ego. The challenge of the ego is even bigger for this person than others with this nodal placement. The Sun placement indicates this person is extremely attached to their home, family, or specifically their submissive or more nurturing parent, and it's very difficult for them to leave home without feeling guilty. Third, the rulers of the nodes carry enormous weight. In your case, the South Node is ruled by the Moon and the North Node is ruled by Saturn, which is another reason your nodal lessons play out in parental relationships. The houses of these planets indicate challenges and opportunities, respectively. For example, let's say our hypothetical Cancer Pisces person has Saturn in Virgo in the 6th house, likely sextile their South Node and trine their North Node. In the past, they would have struggled at work and in their relationships with co-workers, as well as with being practical. They still carry this struggle into this life, making the lessons of their Capricorn North Node even more important. Even so, the harmonious aspect Saturn is making to the nodes indicates this placement is not entirely hurtful. In fact, it concentrates their self-discipline and inner father figure, Saturn, on daily work and routines, 6th house, and their working style can actually be practical, Virgo, once they tap into it. Meanwhile, let's say their Sun and South Node are trine their Pisces Moon in the 12th house. This makes their need for emotional merging even more essential to their emotional well-being, but in the 12th house of hidden things, their lunar nature is hidden in the subconscious, difficult to express openly and outwardly. While they feel deeply, it's hard for them to express their compassion and sensitivity. In fact, they may be very unconscious when it comes to their feelings, which can explode in unexpected ways. Their North Node in Capricorn in the 10th house is inviting them to bring their emotions out of the dark so they no longer have to be ruled by them. In fact, their emotional depths may prove useful in their career, once they learn to harness them. It would be the task of many lifetimes to interpret every possible configuration of Big Three, nodal aspects, and nodal rulers in combination with each nodal placement. It has taken me many years just to write these 144 ebooks on the signs and houses of the nodes. But I hope this example has given you a clue of how to suss out any additional challenges or blocks your particular chart may represent. If you're not sure, I recommend finding an astrologer who specializes in the nodes and can interpret your chart specifically. If and when I am personally available, I will make it known on the website. Famous North Node Capricorn 10th House individuals. Learning about the lives and choices of your fellow travelers can help you see both healthy and unhealthy ways of leveraging your South Node wisdom and pursuing your North Node purpose. Rabindranath Tagore, Robert Redford, Al Capone, John McCain, Dean Martin, Stéphane Mallarmé, Jean-Léon Gérôme, Martha Washington, Antoine de Caunes, Mario Lopez, Manolete, Ron Howard, Margot Hemingway, Princess Mathilde Duchess of Brabant, Frederick II of Prussia, Arleti, Oscar de la Hoya, Abdul Fattah el-Sisi, José Rizal, Emiliano Zapata, Lena Horne, Abdulhamid II, Pipo Bordo, Kem Yilmaz, Vittorio Mussolini, Judd Hirsch, Michel Jazzy, Captain Sensible, Leon Duo, Princess Alice of the UK,